Welcome to Tales on the Towpath, the podcast where every mile tells a story.
We're two runners who spend a lot of time out here on the C&O Canal towpath, talking about training, racing, and everything that happens between the miles.
From early morning runs to the stories that keep us moving.
This is where endurance meets inspiration, one step, one tail at a time.
So lace up and join us on the path, because every trail has a story, and this one's ours.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Adam Lowe.
And I'm Chris Earl.
And I'm Katie Lowe.
Well, Chris and Katie, we have a very special guest with us today. I am pumped to introduce our guest. He is one of the strongest backyard ultra runners in the United States. He has won Capital Backyard 3 times with a personal best at Capital of 75 yards. He's won Big's Backyard with a PR of 88 yards there, which is 366.7 miles. So just a little over 3.5 days of continuous running. He's won the Bullshit Backyard Ultra in 2025. And most recently, he's won the More Miles Last One Standing Challenge, which we co-race direct with 29 yards or 120.8 miles. So our guest today is none other than Scott Snell. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, we are super excited to have you on today and talk about the Backyard Ultra and just running in general and to get to know you a little bit better. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself outside of the running world?
Yeah, so outside of running, I mean, running's a pretty big part of my life, but outside of that, I've got a family, my wife and 4 kids. We got 4 boys at home. So when I'm not running to train for a race, I'm usually chasing them around or taking them to activities and everything else they got going on. And then for work, I work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, where, just to keep it short and general, we do applied research in plant sciences for conservation work, mostly focused on agricultural land. So otherwise, yeah, that's kind of like the big points in my life.
Is your job like okay with you when you go to a Backyard Ultra? They're cool with you going, hey, I could be gone from anywhere between 12 hours and 300 hours?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. As long as the timing works out, as long as there's nothing major going on at work, my supervisor's pretty flexible, and we've been through it enough times that when I request time off for a race, he usually knows it's like up in the air how many days I'm going to be taking off. So it really does give you an advantage for like long backyards when you have that freedom to run from Saturday and take off the entire week if necessary for travel and recovery and whatnot. Because that's the way backyards are going now. Like the real competitive ones, if you want to be in them till the end, plan on taking a week off. If it starts on Saturday, plan on not going back to work till Wednesday or at the earliest. So it's definitely an advantage having that flexibility at work.
So, Scott, tell us a little bit about how you first got into trail and ultra running. I'm guessing that was, not something you started with, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started running is like about a little over 20 years ago now. Kind of 2 major like motivating factors kind of got me into running. The first being that I met my wife and she's a runner. So part of the reason was just to have an excuse to run, to do something with her. So started running. And the other reason was I was a regular smoker at the time, and I didn't really want to quit, but I knew I should quit for years. And so running kind of gave me another reason to kick that habit. And it was a really good tool to kick the nicotine addiction, because anytime I had a craving, I just would go for a quick run, and that would solve it. So those are the 2 main reasons. But yeah, that's I can't say enough for anyone who's trying to kick the smoking habit. Just take up running.
Well, at what point did you realize backyard ultras were your specialty?
I'd say it took a few years, a couple years before I really decided that I was going to focus mainly on backyards. Before I ever ran one, when I first heard of them, I didn't think I would like them. I thought the idea sounded ridiculous and like, why would you want to do that? Because at that time I mean, I'd done up to 100-mile races, but they're all set distance races. And I really enjoyed doing those. And so I didn't like the idea of limiting your pace like you have to with a backyard. So I tried, the first one I ran was in 2019, Run Ragged up in Connecticut. And that's kind of a unique one because it's only like a 5K course, but it's a tough course. And that ended up going, I think it was like 31 or 32 hours. Ended up just like, I think it came out to 99 miles at the finish. And I ended up being the last one standing there, but I almost quit at one point during it. And I definitely, while I was running it, I didn't think I would ever want to do another backyard or last person standing format race again. But then a buddy of mine kind of had like he had a true backyard. He's in Pennsylvania, lives right off the Mid-State Trail, and I had met him through running other races in Pennsylvania. And so we ran a few races together. Then he started throwing these like kind of impromptu, like little running gatherings in his backyard. And so he set up a backyard in his backyard using the Mid-State Trail. And I ended up being the last one there, but it was a small group, not really competitive. So that only went like 60 miles. But again, it was a kind of a tough trail. But then I guess I don't think it was, I did a couple more backyards, and then I don't think it was until Capital, the first time I ran Capital backyard in, I think that would have been 2022. And that's the first one that really, really pushed me, that I went into like thinking I'm probably not going to be the last one. There's a very low chance of me being the last one standing here, because it was a silver ticket race to get a spot on the US team for Bigs that year. So I knew there's going to be a lot of competition there. So I went into it just thinking, I'm going to go as far as I can until I can't go anymore. And I ended up being in the last handful of runners, and things just kept going good for me until I was the last one there and got a spot on the US team that year. And I think that's the point where I kind of like realized that I'm kind of good at this backyard thing. And then going to Bigs, I mean, that I still like that year at Bigs, I still felt like a total imposter there, even though I mean, at that year, I think we did, I think it was like 250, around 250 miles, 250, I think it was 254 was the final mileage at the end. And even with that, like, and, getting the silver ticket spot, when I showed up there with, well, like the biggest name on the team is Harvey Lewis, but there are other really talented runners on the team. I mean, I totally just felt like I was out of my realm there, and just total imposter syndrome that first year at Bigs.
Yeah, that's one of the tough parts about the backyard, is like you can only go so far as your competition allows you. So if you went 254 and you felt great, but you had to stop at that point, and you have other guys who have done 300 plus, that's 50 miles of doubt right there. So I can definitely see how you would feel, not like a lesser runner, but like a little bit of that, am I supposed to be here?
Yeah, yeah, and that gets into the whole mental aspect of the backyard thing, because like when you're going up against like other people who have done, gone through 3 nights. I mean, and if you've only done one night, I mean that's a big mental hurdle to get over to keep yourself motivated to keep going. I really experienced that. It was an earlier backyard. It was the Keystone backyard. And at that point, the farthest I'd gone was the close to the 100 miles at Run Ragged. And going into that, I knew one of the other guys there had done some 200 milers, and not just, they were tough 200 milers. A couple of the ones that they have over in Europe where it's like crazy elevation change. So when it got down to just me and him for the last, few hours of the race, I had already accepted that I was not going to be the last one standing, because like this guy's done 200 milers, and he's obviously going to be able to keep going longer than me. But it's just I kept pushing, and really unexpectedly, he called it and we went, I think, about 130 miles for that. So I was shocked. I was shocked when he turned and said that he was done.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, real quick. I think we've done 2 episodes on backyard ultras at least, right, Chris? We talked about Capital because I ran Capital this year. I think we previewed more miles and then we reviewed more miles afterwards. But you said a true backyard. Could you give somebody real quick a rundown on what a true backyard, what that format is in case they don't know?
Yeah, yeah. So when I say true backyard, I'm basically like referring to like the standardized backyard rules that Laz has come up with for his official backyard rules, and those are the ones that are kind of recognized for the international competition. Like with bigs, it's every other year. There's a team year and and then a satellite team year and then an individual year. And to qualify for those, every country has different qualifications, but the one qualification is that the race that you use as your qualifier has to follow, his standard backyard rules, which are basically it's 4.167 mile course, and you have to complete it every hour on the hour, and that's the main criteria for the backyard format. Yeah, there's other rules in there. I mean, probably the other main rule that everyone knows or learns at some point is that no outside aid is allowed. So your crew can help you after you finish your yard, but once the yard starts, you're not allowed any outside aid. You can get aid, share water, gels, whatever support from other runners that are still in the race. But if you get aid from anyone else, it's instant disqualification. I think what it is. So I think there's some other rules. I think no poles are allowed for backyard, for the official backyard, but otherwise it's really up to, I think most of the other rules are up to the race director. There can be like another little quirky part of it is like there can be a secondary aid station like on course as long as it's available to all the runners. So because it's not outside aid at that point, it's within the race. So I mean, otherwise, yeah, it's pretty simple rules.
Yeah, I think you hit them all. Thanks for describing that for us. What was it, just a month ago, you won the More Miles Backyard Ultra. So we wanted to spend just a couple minutes talk about that real quick. What was a couple things maybe that made this race special for you?
Yeah, there were two big things that made this race really special for me. And well, I mean, they're both made it pretty important to me. One of the big ones was that my whole family came with me to this one, which is pretty rare occasion. My wife and my four kids. I got 4 boys. The youngest is 3. The oldest is 14. So we're pretty busy chasing them around and else so that they come with me to a race. So just the fact that everything worked out and they were able to come to this race with me to crew me made this one special. And then my oldest, my 14-year-old, he registered to run it also. It was his second backyard. He did the it was a year ago in March. He did his first one at the BS backyard, and afterwards he said he enjoyed it and he would like to do another, but he does track and cross country, so we didn't want to interfere with that, mess that up by going and running, 4 miles every hour in the hour for endless laps. So we had to pick one that was outside of his track and cross country season. So this More Miles fit the bill for that. So that was really special part of this race, was being able to run another backyard with him, and just like pretty much ran with him almost every step of the way. And his goal was to hit 50 miles, and he did that, and then kept going, and just broke the 100K distance before he called it. So just like watching him push through and struggle through those last like he's struggling pretty hard the last 3 hours, but he was like just so determined to keep pushing and keep going. So just like so proud of him, like running with him and seeing him push through it. and the determination he had to get it done made this race like really a really special one for me. And the other thing why this race stood out from others was I was recovering from a back injury that I had early. Well, it started at the end of last year. So this is the first race that I had since dealing with this back injury. So I really went into it pretty uncertain of how it was going to go. The longest training run I had from when I got back into training after physical therapy was was only 18 miles. So I really hadn't tested it out up until more miles. So I was really nervous about how my back was going to react beyond that, beyond 20 miles or 50 miles. So just really scared about that going into it. But thankfully everything worked out and didn't bother me much at all during the race. So that was really a huge relief for it to work out as well as it did.
Yeah, so Scott, I know the local running group here, we were really excited when we saw that you had signed up because we're all pretty competitive and we stock that participant list pretty good going into the race to see who's going to be there and give each other a hard time about who's going to do better and whatever. But I'm just curious, like when you signed up for More Miles, how much did you stock the participant list, or did you just go into it with the idea that you were just going to go and see what you could do?
I looked at the participant list. I didn't, just through ultra sign up that, and I didn't research. I mean, like if I like the top names on the participant list, I didn't go as far as like checking, really checking into their background and seeing what they've done. Do they have any FKTs or anything like that? Because I mean, I with this race, I mean, my goal always for a backyard is to go until I can't go anymore, and that's just the mentality I go into it with. But with this one, it was a little bit different coming off of the injury. So the big the big item for me to check off was not let hopefully my back injury wouldn't be the cause of me stopping. So I kind of went into it. I mean, I didn't know who was going to be there, and like the top runners there, I there are no names that I was familiar with, so I didn't know what to expect. But with the backyard, it's like someone can have never done a backyard and just crush it. So that's kind of I kind of don't really have many expectations when I look at someone's race history. If even if they've never done a backyard, I mean, who knows what they're going to do. So that's kind of where I was going with it. But yeah, how the back reacted was like my biggest concern going into it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really like about this format is it is so different from the traditional ultra race where, it is just how fast can you get from point A to point B. This one is truly an endurance event, and Adam and I have talked about it several times. Like I don't even like to refer to it as a backyard race. It's just an endurance event to see who can manage the distance and fueling and all of that. So, yeah, I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah. I sometimes just call them a test of stubbornness because I mean, so much of it is like just how unwilling someone is to quit.
Was there a defining moment when you knew you had a chance to win?
When I start a backyard, I always like have the thought that I've got a chance. I think that's the best way. I mean, if your goal is to win it, I think the best way to go into it is to truly believe that you have a chance. I think if you don't truly believe it, you're setting yourself up to not win it. So I wouldn't say there was no one point that really stood out to me during the race that I was like certain. I was like, oh, certain I've got this wrapped up because even when it got down into the second day and there were only 3 of us left, I mean the other 2 runners, Brendan and Danielle, they're both looking strong still from what I could see. It looked like Brendan was struggling a little bit to get started at the start of every yard, but then he kept on, finding his stride mid yard and was coming in strong. And I had talked to him a bit earlier in the race, and I knew he was like wanted to go far. So I thought he was like he seemed, the most competitive out of anyone else I talked to. So I thought when it was down to 3 of us, I thought he was going to go into a second night. And Danielle, I hadn't talked to her much, but she looked so solid and consistent all day. I I assumed she could go all day too. She didn't look like she was struggling at all. So when we were, cranking out the yards the second day, I was expecting it to go to a second night at that point. I was confident that I could make it through another another day of yards, but I struggled quite a bit the first night, so I wasn't sure what's going to happen that second night if it went that far. But it's just my my mindset is just keep going until you can't go. So that was the plan. So.
One of the things when I listen to running podcasts, and I think when our listeners listen as well, they like to hear the stories about like the suffering, right? Like what went wrong? How did you fight through those? Because that's something that all runners go through. Even on an easy 3 mile recovery run, some people go through that, every time. So what was the toughest stretch of the race and how'd you get through that?
The toughest for me during more miles was those overnight hours. I think it's like probably somewhere between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. was a pretty rough patch for me. I'm not sure really what exactly went wrong. I think I probably got a little down on calories. I came into my tent one night or after 1 yard, and as my 12-year-old was crewing me because the 14-year-old had run 100K and he was recovering, sleeping. So I came in and my 12-year-old was on the cot sleeping in the tent. And I was like, oh man, I didn't have the heart to wake him up. So I just crewed myself at that point. And it was fine, but I just was feeling a little bit more rushed than normal doing it that way. And I started just coming in with, not much of a buffer there. It went from like 7 or 8 minutes between yards to being like 5 minutes and then under 5 minutes. So I was struggling quite a bit. And then I was having some stomach issues. My stomach was hurting, and I think it just was due to like not eating enough food, because I was just going in and grabbing a couple bites real quick and chugging some Coke and then heading back to the starting corral. So I think is the biggest issue was just being low on calories. But thankfully, eventually, Marty Fox was there volunteering, and he's crewed me in the past, and he saved me at multiple races in the past in a few different ways. He hooked me up with a rain jacket at one point during a downpour, during a 24-hour when I was shivering and needed a rain jacket and didn't have one. And then it was the my longest distance at Capitol. He jumped in to crew me there and kept me going. I had a pretty low point during the third day there, and he talked me through it and kept me motivated to keep going. He somehow he realized that I was struggling. He must have picked up on it, and he found my son in there sleeping and woke him up and got him going again. And then yeah, my son made some coffee for me, and then he was back on it. So it all worked out. But yeah, that was probably the toughest part for me. And the way I got through it was, I was just like, I just kept telling myself, I'm going to keep going until I can't go, even though I was, coming in with 2 minutes at one point. One of the things that for this race in particular that got me through it was I was thinking about how much my older son was struggling his last few hours, and how ashamed I'd be of myself if I gave up, even though I knew I could come in with 2 minutes. So I just kept that in my mind and kept thinking of him and how much he pushed to get to that 100K mark. And that got me through a few times when I was just ready to call it. I was at the point where I was like making excuses for myself why it would be the best choice for me to quit. I was like having a little bit of lower back pain, not so much little in the lower back pain, but it was also some pain in my glutes, which is where, when I had this back injury, where the major symptom was pain like radiating to my glutes. So I was like, oh crap, here we go. It's like back issue starting up. But I think it was more just my body being exhausted at that point, and just stress, wear and tear on the body from it being the longest run I'd done in like half a year. But at the time, I was like panicking a bit because I'm thinking, oh, my back issue is springing up and I'm not going to be able to run for another 2 months again. And it's the best case scenario for me here is to quit and recover and not hurt myself. But Marty and my son Chris, they pushed me through it and nursed me back to health. And I got through the night. Sun came up. I still wasn't totally like motivated to keep going, but then my wife got up with the little ones and seeing them cheering me on, and I probably like told her that I was ready to quit and call it, and I used the back pain excuse on her too, and she wasn't having it. So she said the right words to keep me going, and without them like pushing me like that, I mean there's a good chance I would have called it, but they knew what to tell me, and they kept me in it.
Hey, Chris, before you jump in, Scott, can you said how your son motivated you and kind of kept you going. Can you talk about his shoe selection? Stephen had a very interesting shoe selection after like mile 50 of the race. So well, I think we need to touch
Yeah.
on that real quick while you've been talking about him.
Dude, yeah, that was a funny story. Because I thought you were gonna throw out a Mount to Coast plug there or something. Like, oh, use my referral link. No, he was wearing Mount to Coast shoes, but he wore those for 50 miles, and then he was gonna call it after 50 miles because that was his goal, was 50 miles. But me and another runner that I'd been running with quite a bit, Samir, we had been running together a lot and chat, and so Steven was there with us running the whole time. So on so it was the yard that would get us to 50. We were all running together as a group. So I told Samir, I was like, hey, my son's gonna quit after this one unless we can talk him into keep going. So Samir told him that, well, a lot of people are gonna quit after 50. So if you do one more, you'll place that much higher than like the 4 or 5 people that call it at 50. And he didn't look too happy about it, but he was like, oh yeah, you're probably right. So he committed to doing one more to do 54 miles. So he went back out and did that. And then after that, he was like, okay, I'm done now. And he's like, how should I quit? Should I just like not go out, or, how do you stop? And he's like, oh, well, he wanted to like get out of his shoes and like let his feet breathe a little bit. So he's like, oh, should I just, I'll put these Crocs on that I have, and I'll just take off out of the starting trail with my Crocs, and then I'll just turn around and walk back. I was like, yeah, that's good. That'll be funny. That's a good idea. So he does it, and he takes off running out of the starting trail for the next yard in his Crocs. And 2 minutes out, he's like, my feet feel pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm like, oh, well, maybe you should just run another yard in your Crocs. He's like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So he did it. He ran that whole yard just wearing his Crocs. And he said it felt great. He said his feet felt really good. I've never run that far in Crocs, but it worked for him. And then he felt so good, he put his shoes back on to do another 2 yards to get to the 100K mark. Because we had talked about that earlier too. It's like, well, if you do 50, you might as well it's only 3 more hours and you'll hit 100K. So it's like, if you hit your goal of 50, you might as well go for the 100K. And I was like, I was at the point, that was when I was kind of at the point where I was like, like the kind of like the protective parent instincts were kicking in, where you're like watching him struggle for so long, but he's still pushing himself through. And like, so when he did finally call it at 100K, I was pretty really, it was a relief, even though I think he could have done another one, or at least another one, but I was relieved when he was happy with 100K and called it, because I was getting to the point where it's like, yeah, I want to try and protect you here, and I don't want to see you in pain anymore. But at that point, Samir is like, well, if you do one more at 100K, you know how many more people you'll place above. I was like, no, man, don't do anymore. Don't push him anymore. He's good. He's happy with 100K.
Yeah, so we run with Samir quite a bit, and actually he and I were up on the AT earlier tonight, and yeah, that's every day. with Samir.
Yeah,
He's
no,
always
he was
encouraging people to go just a little bit farther.
he was so much fun. I loved meeting him. He was so much fun to run with, and yeah, it was like the last few yards he kept on telling my boy, he's like, you know what? You're not gonna have to mow the yard all summer. You got the best excuse. You just ran 100K with your dad. He can't ask you to mow the yard.
So I'm going to switch back now and get us back talking. I've got one more question for you on the last one standing more miles challenge. And what I'm kind of interested in, you touched on it a little bit earlier, that early in the race you were targeting coming in at around, I guess, 53 minutes, because you said you had like 7 minutes left. And then it sort of, that time shrank as you were going through the race. But when it got down and the sun came back up on the second day and there were just you and a small handful of folks left, did your strategy evolve, or did you go back to trying to hit that 53-minute mark? Or how do you approach when the field gets smaller?
I'd say I don't really intentionally like adjust my pace based on the field. Like that 7 to 8 minute mark, 7 to 8 minutes in between yards. I've found that's kind of like my sweet spot. It's like I feel like it's enough time to pretty much do anything I need to do, and anything longer than that feels like I'm just pushing too hard just to sit there for an extra couple minutes. So I really don't try not to change my race based on what other people are doing in the backyard. I think that's a good backyard strategy, is just like, I mean, you can say it for any race, but I think just running your race is really important in the backyard, because in the backyard, you can't impact other people's races. You can't run away with it. You can't push other people to go harder. It's like you just have to outlast them. And the best way to do that is run your most efficient race. So I've found that 7 to 8 minute mark really does just feels like the most comfortable pace for me, and gives me time so that I don't feel rushed doing pretty much anything I need to do. The only time I intentionally try and adjust that pace is if I've got like some extra stuff that I want to get done between yards, like if there's a like a foot care issue I want to take care of, sock and shoe change, or during the night laps, if it's on an easier road course during the night, and you can run like the same effort level and come in with a few extra minutes, and get a few and try and get some sleep. I mean, that's another reason why I might pick up the pace a little bit, but otherwise, like the field size, I really doesn't affect how I'm going to run my race.
Have you ever had someone try to play mind games with you, though, with, taking off real fast at one of the yards late in a race, or anything like that?
I'd say I'm not sure, because sometimes it feels like other people are playing mind games, but I think a lot of times that's just in my head. Because sometimes, I mean, I think I've probably said things that other people they might take it the wrong way and think I'm like playing mind games with them, but I've never intentionally played mind games with anyone, but I think, when you're sleep deprived and exhausted, things can come out the wrong way and be taken the wrong way. And so I feel like I have heard other people say things that I'm like, oh man, this dude's trying to mess with my head.
Scott,
But
your
I give
son,
him the benefit.
Scott, your son wore Crocs to mess with your head. How do you not miss the obvious? He was telling you, Dad, this is so easy. I can do this in
It's so
Crocs.
easy. I don't even need shoes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He almost had me. I was like, oh man, this kid. I'll just let him run away with this thing.
Well, speaking of mind games, I've never run a full backyard ultra. I've done the 1 mile version before, set up a lot different whenever it was just virtual. But with that said, it seems like they're as much mental as they are physical. How do you train your mind for running a race like this?
One of the things I do, like, it's not even really intentional, but I think one of the best ways to train like the mental aspect is just to like when you're doing your training runs, do your training runs when you don't want to. And I mean, I mean, just I think a lot of us are kind of forced to do that anyway, because we all have everyone's got a busy schedule. So, I mean, trying to squeeze in training runs it's tough, but for everyone. But I mean, I know in my situation, you know, working full time, having 4 kids at home, juggling my wife's work schedule and kids' activities, everything else going on, is like sometimes, it's not until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night when I've got, then it's like, okay, well now I've got a chance to get out and run. And it's like, oh, some days it's like, well, I'm ready for bed at that point and got to get up for work the next day. So I know I'm sacrificing sleep by staying up later, but yeah, some people set the alarm early and they're sacrificing sleep on the other end. So I feel like you're kind of like you're sacrificing sleep either way. And I tend to prefer running, s- staying up later and then being super groggy in the morning and forcing myself up to get to work. But I think that's a big benefit to like just the backyard format as far as like mental training, is just like not making excuses to not get out for your runs, because it's easy to make excuses and there's endless number of excuses. So if you can just like tell yourself those excuses are all crap, I'm still getting my run in. That's the key to getting out for another yard.
Chris and I, in February, before I went to run Capital Backyard, we did our own training of, like, I did a 12-hour simulation, and I know Chris did as well. Do you do stuff like that before you have a big backyard coming up, or do you have like a different type of training that you do specifically for the backyards?
I don't really do anything like backyard specific. I've I, I've I've thought it'd be fun just kind of following the backyard format on my own, but it's just like, I guess it just feels like it'd be too time consuming to me to follow the backyard format outside of a backyard. So I've never actually done it, but like 90%, like vast majority of all my training miles are geared towards backyards, and it's just like I just run really a lot of like really easy pace, like conversation pace miles, and just like I do more just try and be like consistent with the training rather than doing huge runs on the weekend and then taking rest days during the week. I just, shoot for like trying to get in good mileage, like almost every day. There's very few days that I take a rest day. Like my rest day is usually if I do like a 6 miler, that's like kind of the rest day. Otherwise I'm usually doing like 8 to 12 miles a day. And a lot of times it's broken up just out of necessity to get in the mileage I want. Like I'll usually do like 3 or 4 miles at lunch, and during the summer that's like good heat training, heat acclimation, getting out during the hottest part of the day, and then usually I'll try and pick up the extra miles that I want to get in the evening, so that way I get a few night miles in. So I don't know, I found that's a good way to get in the mileage I want without being too much of a burden to everyone else's schedules.
So maybe you've thought about this as you've compiled your resume of backyard ultras, but what do you think separates a good backyard runner from a great backyard runner?
I'd I'd say probably the mental game is the big separating factor, because I mean you can be super fit and be the best, the most fit person in that group of runners, but if you don't have the mental game to like keep going, I mean I mean just the format wears on you mentally. I mean it can be so boring too, like running the same loop over and over. Like you've seen that same route, 20, 25 times already after the first day. It's like it can get old. I mean, it can get pretty old, especially if it's a single course. Like if you don't have a switch between a day course and a night course, it can get old a lot more quickly. But yeah, I'd say that mental game, and like the other part is it's tied in to like just the mentality of it, but just like the desire or the determination, to keep going, to wanna be the last one. Maybe it's just stubbornness too. I'm not sure, but it I don't think it's the physical. The physical factor isn't the biggest factor for being, excelling from like a good backyard runner to a great backyard runner. I think it's more on the mental and grit side, and also durability. I mean, if you know, so many times you see people walk away from backyards like with some kind, like maybe not like a serious injury, but something starts hurting enough that they don't want a serious injury, so they call it, which is smart. But then at the same time, if you can go that far without having, you know, excessive pain, or if it's just pain that is just muscle fatigue, something that's not serious, then I mean, it's that durability factor is huge too. And I'm not sure how you train for that. Maybe it's some cross training would help with that, but or maybe you just have to be lucky and not be injury prone. I'm not sure.
So on that durability issue, do you do any strength training?
Not not really. I mean, I do a little bit of cross training, just like but yeah, not as much as I know I should. I've probably done more in the last 4 months just because of the physical therapy I went through with the back injury recovery. So I've done more core work in the last 4 months than I probably did in the last 4 years. So it's probably something that maybe if I'd been doing it in the last 10 years, this I never would have had the back injury. But I'm trying to make it more of a routine now to work in some cross training, especially the core work.
Yeah, I'm sure Katie appreciates that last little bit at the end there because she's always on Adam and myself to do more strength training because she's a big proponent. And I know she's right. But I also don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of typical of ultra runners. I mean, it's like we like to run, so you know, we could run a couple more miles if we don't do 20-minute core workout. And if I could run 20, if I could run 2 more miles or do the core workout, it's like I'd prefer the miles.
Yep.
But yeah, we all know we should be.
Yeah, you've already mentioned that you're busy, so it is hard to fit it all in, but I still get on their case. That's not gonna change. Anyway, you have mentioned that you like to keep your yards, the running part of your yards, this very consistent in the amount of time that they take and come in with the same amount of time left over before the next yard. Do you have a routine that you do when you come back in and before you go out on each yard?
Yeah, kind of. It's not, I'm not really, I'm not super structured about it. Some people are very like, so structured, like with having spreadsheets and nutrition plans. I'm a little bit more just kind of like winging it a lot of the time. But my strategy really is just like, I usually kind of go through a checklist, like while I'm out on the yard. Like I try and prioritize like what what my top what my top things are that I want to get done in between yards before I come back in. So a lot of it's standard stuff, like get rid of a wrapper, refill my water, like all that little stuff. But then if there's other things, like I should reapply sunscreen, and then anything else that comes up, I'd like to do a sock change. So it's really like I just kind of like try and get a checklist before I get in, so that way I can take care of everything that needs to be taken care of, and then it's high. I usually like have like high priority and low priority, and if I have time for the low priority, good. Otherwise it'll just be like wait till next time, and it might move up the priority list, or I might forget about it and maybe it wasn't really that necessary.
Hey, Scott, so I think I know the answer to this. I'm going to change this question around a little bit. You said that you raced ultras and I'm assuming some road races before you got into backyards. And, we all know those are, you go from point A to B as fast as you can. And if you're competitive, you're trying to pass people in front of you and not be passed by people, that are coming up behind you. So in the backyard, though, like, you're really rewarded for going slow, right? Being consistent, and the speed component, doesn't really come into play, very, very often unless you need more sleep or you got to take care of something. So, like at what point in your backyard career were you able to make that mental shift from, okay, this is about speed. Now it's not, it's about consistency. That's one thing that I struggled with at Capitol for sure was, hey, it's not a road race where I don't care how fast that guy goes out.
I guess I guess it's just something that kind of happened naturally over the course of like doing multiple backyards. Because like I was saying earlier, you know, it's like I was enjoying doing, you know, set distance ultras, and I was having fun doing those, just trying to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. That's what really deterred me from even like being interested in backyards when I first heard about them. I was like, you know, the point of running a race is to, I mean, in my mind at the time, it was to see how fast you can go. So it was really like how far you can go. I mean, I liked the idea of running far. I mean, I was doing up to like 100 milers at that time, so I liked long distance running. But I don't think I was as you know, enamored with really seeing how far you can push yourself at that point. I liked finish lines. So backyards didn't really appeal to me. But I mean, I think then just kind of making the shift to learning, you know, what works for me as far as pace in the backyard, and how much time is a good amount of time versus how much is too much or too little. That just all kind of like happened naturally over like the course of running a few backyard races, and it's kind of gotten fine tuned over the years. Well, I wouldn't say fine tuned, but I still kind of wing the whole things. But you know, I mean, I crewed myself for backyards for the first, I don't know, like probably 4 or 5 backyard races I did. So then it was like a lot more critical that I was like, I kind of prioritized what I was doing between, and cleaning up a little bit after myself so I don't leave like a soda can sitting out, and you know, like have a real messy, you know, aid station area while I'm going back out. So I was like that was like when I was crewing myself, that was like my last 30 seconds was making sure I like put my stuff away, put my stuff back in the cooler so it doesn't get hot while I'm out on the next yard. So making the shift to like having a crew at a backyard, like that was like a big change for me with the first couple of races where I had a crew like dedicated to taking care of me. I mean, that was nice. It changed things. And I mean, now I was like, I still think I could do okay like without a crew, but man, it's a lot more pressure. It really is, and the crew just really like takes so much of that pressure off, and really it's and when you get into like, you know, the when you get real deep in the race, when it's like 2 days in, it's like, well, then it's like you really are depending on the crew to do a lot more of the thinking for you. Because I mean, when you're that sleep deprived and exhausted, it's just like, you know, you just gotta like focus on staying motivated and moving.
Yeah, so when you are that deep into a race and you're tired, you're getting back, you're trying to get a little bit of time off your feet and get a little bit of fuel back in, and then, you know, it gets to be 3 minutes before the top of the hour and 2 minutes, and Adam's blowing that whistle. What's the internal dialogue you have with yourself at that point? Are you like anxious and ready to go, or are you like me where you have some choice words under your breath for that whistle?
It changes. It changes. But I mean, when you get to the point where it's been like 2 nights with almost no sleep, like when you're into that third day, and you're hearing that whistle starts going off. I mean, it all depends on what mindset I'm in at the time. The toughest part, I mean, I think getting going again at night is tougher. It's just more of a challenge because when you're sleep deprived already and it's the middle of the night, and it's like all you really want to do is go lay down on the cot and put your head in the sleeping bag. I mean, it's that's like the toughest times to get back out there and keep going. Um, but like if I'm in a good spot, like there's been a few races where like it doesn't bother me. It's just like I kind of get into the mindset that like this is my job, this is what I'm doing, this is my life right now. Is like when the whistles go off, that I go run that, and I just don't think about it, don't question it. It's just like this is life. So if I'm in that state, it doesn't, you know, there's no no fighting it, because it's just like, you know, it's like get up and go to work. It's like, well, I could he's like, I'm not gonna like just not go to work today. I mean, I could think of plenty of other things that I want to do, but you know, it's like, oh, this is my job, this is what I'm doing. So if I'm in the right, if I'm in that good state of mind where I'm just like focused on this is what I'm doing, it doesn't take a whole lot to get me going. But there have been times, where I'm just like, you tell the crew, it's like, yeah, I don't, like, I've said the exact words, like, to my buddy that was crewing me at Biggs a couple years ago. I was just like, I was feeling so good, like the whole race, but then I think it was the fourth night even. I think I woke up and I was just like, I just whispered to him, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But he said the right words. He's like, yeah, I know, but you're doing it. So he had more of like more of the stern, get out there and keep going, buddy. And that kind of attitude worked for me at the time and got me back in the mindset. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing now. So don't even question it. Just do it.
So speaking of being sleep deprived, how do you decide when and if you're going to sleep?
It's I try to sleep like during the night. I want to try and sleep pretty much every break between yards. At the very least, I'll close my eyes for a couple minutes, even if I think I'm not gonna fall asleep. I think there is like something. It helps rejuvenate you a little bit, just a little mental break, even if you just close your eyes and don't, even if you don't like really fully sleep. But it kind of depends. It's kind of depends on the race. So I don't, because I don't really have like a set schedule, like as far as like, oh, I'm gonna run this many slow laps during the night and then I'll run a fast lap and get a 10-minute nap. I'm usually still like trying to stay pretty consistent. And if it's an easier night course and I feel like I'm not pushing too hard to come in with 10 minutes, then I'll just try and keep on coming in consistently with 10 minutes, you know, get in, get a couple bites of something to eat, and then lay down for like 6, 7 minutes. But I really don't have a set schedule for anything. I just kind of like so much of what I do is just like based on like how the race is going and how I'm feeling.
Do you get nervous if you don't have a crew? Like, do you get nervous about sleeping, or are you pretty good with
Yeah.
just getting up at the whistles?
No, no, I'm super nervous about oversleeping through the whistles. The only time I think I've had crew for every backyard I've done that's gone, through more than one night, except for I think it's the first year at Capitol that I went uncrewed, and I didn't sleep at all the first night. I just would close my eyes and rest a little bit. But I believe it was the second night I was super drowsy and I was so nervous about actually like laying down and falling asleep and sleeping through the whistles that I had asked a race volunteer to just keep an eye on me. And I mean, I wasn't far from like the where their aid tent was there at Capitol, and so I had a race volunteer look out for me just to make sure I didn't sleep through the whistle. So it worked out. It worked out. But yeah, yeah,
Another trick I've heard you say that you used was you had your 12-year-old son sleep in your cot, so you couldn't oversleep at the.
yeah,
That was a pretty good strategy as well.
yeah, yeah. That'll definitely keep you from oversleeping.
What's one thing that your crew does, like, that people watching from the outside might never notice?
I don't know. Maybe it's like there's probably just kind of like predicting what I'm gonna need because it's not something you can really observe. But I think when my wife is there, she's able to predict what I'm gonna need and kind of knows what she needs to say to keep me motivated, to keep me in the race, and having like different food options ready to go for me. I mean, a lot of crews do that, just like have food options choices there. I think just being able to predict like what I'm going to need is probably like something that the couple of my buddies that have crewed for me multiple times are will be able to do that, and my wife is pretty good at it too.
So, Scott, you've had the opportunity to compete at some of the biggest backyard events in the world. What's something you learned from watching the elite backyard runners that you competed against that had a real impact on your backyard ultra running?
Yeah, I'd probably I'd probably say like just some of them they're just like so consistent, very consistent. I see a lot of the really high performing backyard runners that just maintain consistency like 2 3 days into a race. And also, I mean, it's their attitude. I think that's probably even bigger. It's just like you talk to some of them and it's like, you realize, I think you realize like they're always doing good, and they're always like, even if they don't, they really don't feel it, I think they're gonna tell you that they're doing good just because like and I think that's a big part of the mental game too, is like when you like voice something, I think you kind of give it power. So even though if like something's hurting or you're feeling tired or you just don't feel like running this course another time, it's like if you just keep that to yourself and just be like, ah, well, I'm not going to say anything because I think when you actually speak it, then it kind of like makes it more real. And so if you don't share it and you just like stay try and like frame everything in a more positive aspect, just think about try and frame it positively somehow, then that's really gonna like keep you going and avoid you creating excuses that sound more valid than they are.
Sorry, I was muted. So, we just talked about what you've learned from the elites. You've done a lot of these and have a lot of experience. So, what do you think is the biggest mistake new backyard runners make?
I'd say, I mean, it's not exactly a mistake, but I think going into a backyard with a distance goal is not a good strategy if you want to see how far you can go. If your goal is to see how far you can go, don't set a distance goal. I mean, it's like if you've never if you really want to hit 50 miles and like that's part of it, and you're using a backyard to hit 50 miles, I mean, that's great. But if you also want to see how far you can go, don't go into it saying, okay, 50 miles is the goal. And because I think then you get into the trap of like you hit the 50 miles and your body's like, okay, we did it. Job's done. Let's go home. And it's like, I mean, it's 50 miles is good, but I mean, if the goal is to see how far you can go, then you cut yourself short there. So I think setting distance goals is a bad strategy for backyards. If you want to really if you really want to find your limit, don't set a goal. But I mean, nothing wrong with setting distance yards and using a backyard to do it, because I think backyard format can be a really good way to reach those distance goals, especially if you have something like, oh, I really want to do a sub 2400. I mean, backyard's going to get you there if you last for 24 yards. So it may not be it may be tougher doing it in the backyard format because of the time restrictions that you wouldn't have at a set 100 miler. But like if the 100 miles in sub 24 is a big goal that you want to hit, then it's like, well, backyard's going to get you there if you last.
Scott, before I did my first, well, and only so far capital backyard, my goal going in was I actually did my research and I looked at the participant list and what they had done. So I said, man, this Scott guy, he's done amazing. I'm going to follow him. So going in, that was my goal. And then you ended up pulling out because of your back. So my only goal was thrown out the window about 3 days before the race started. But yeah, so that was my goal not working out for me. But
Well, you should have just ran with Dave
yeah,
Kukowski then.
at that point I couldn't do that anymore either. So
I don't know. I was so disappointed about Capital this year. Is such a bummer. Yeah, I love that race, and I always say every time anyone talks about it, I have nothing but good things to say about it. Sarah does such an awesome job as RD there, and it's a beautiful course, great backyard course, love it, and she takes such good care of the runners that yeah, I was totally bummed I wasn't able to be there this
yeah,
year.
well, I'm glad that you are healthy again. Do you have any races on the calendar for the rest of this year?
Right now, it's just Biggs is the only one that, well, I'm not registered yet, but will be registering for. Otherwise, I, I'm I was looking to trying to do either like a 24-hour or a 48-hour between now and then. Just I want to do something that's going to force me to run through one or two nights, just because I struggled with the overnight portion at More Miles so much that I feel like I haven't put myself in that situation of grinding through a night in so long that made it a little bit more difficult at More Miles. So yeah, either I'll find a 24-hour or 48-hour to jump into. Otherwise, right now I haven't seen any that look really good with my schedule. So if I'm not able to find anything, I might shoot for trying to do FKT. That would force me to run overnight.
Awesome. So I have one more question for you, and then we'll let you talk about something other than backyards. What do you think the limit is that people can push the backyard format to?
Man, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I thought, you know, Phil Gore's record of 119, I thought that was going to stand for quite a while, and it did stand for a while. I think what did it last a year?
Yeah.
But the thing is, I he looked so good when he did that 119. If he had someone there pushing him, I don't who knows how much longer he could have gone. So, and then this last race that they just had in Russia with the the kid that did, what did he do? 123. He looked pretty good coming in after 123 yards. So I don't know if him and Phil Gore ever meet up somewhere on a nice course and they both have good days. Who knows what the limit is? I mean, there's some people that speculate that, oh, it could go on for a week or it could just go on forever. You you'll just adjust to the schedule. I'm not sure if I'm a believer in that. I think at some point the wear and tear and the sleep deprivation is going to have to catch up. Even if you are able to still crank out 45-minute laps overnight and get 10 minutes of sleep, it's got to catch up at some point. That and the calories, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe they did what, over 5 days, so it makes you wonder if a week is possible. I mean, I don't know. If it ever becomes an Olympic event, we'll find out. Because this thing becomes an Olympic event, man. Someone's gonna die at one of these things, but if there's an Olympic medal attached to it.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for giving us an hour plus of your time tonight to talk about the backyard and your running journey. This has been a lot of fun, and I know Adam and Katie and I all have our favorite race formats, and the backyard is probably my favorite of all of them. So I appreciate getting your perspective on everything. But before we let you go, on our podcast, there's a tradition we like to have with the guest at the end. We call it the after party, where we just kind of run through some real quick questions where we're just looking for a 1 or 2 word answer on some topics that we aren't able to get into over the course of an hour. So if it's all right with you, I'll just fire off some questions for you. You can give 1 or 2 word answers, and then we'll move on to the next question and we'll wrap it up from there.
Cool, sounds fun.
So first question is, what is your favorite backyard snack?
Pierogies up there.
Okay. Trail shoe of choice.
The Mount to Coast H1s.
Do you prefer the day loop or the night loop?
Whichever one I'm not on.
Fair.
It's just I want to have something to look forward to. That's the strategy.
Coffee or energy drinks?
Energy drink during the backyard, coffee in real life.
Music, podcasts, or silence?
Music.
Favorite backyard course you've ever run?
Shoot, that's tough. And putting me on the spot here with more miles racetrack.
No pressure on More Miles. We know that one's hard.
That's a tough one. But I'd probably come back to Capital. But it's not just the course. It's a lot more too. But everything else Capital brings just makes the course feel so much more fun.
One piece of advice for someone's first backyard ultra.
Have fun. Don't set a distance goal.
All right, last question. If you could race any backyard in the world tomorrow, which one would it be?
I think of all the backyards I'm aware of and that I've looked into a little, I'd really like to go check out Dead Cow Gully.
Yeah, that does seem like a good one.
That looks like a fun race.
Well, Scott, I really appreciate you joining us tonight and coming on the podcast. Such a pleasure talking to you and getting your insight about the backyard. If you would, could you just maybe help us if somebody's sitting on the fence about signing up for a backyard and they aren't sure they're capable of doing it? What would you say to them to help push them off that fence and get them to sign up?
Just dive in. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You know, it's only 4 miles.
I could
I've
tell
used
you
that
the,
line on people so many times.
Yeah, it's only 4 miles.
I could tell you the worst thing that it could happen. Katie can verify this. Scott, you said earlier that at the fourth night, you said you didn't want to do this anymore. It took me about 4 yards to say that. I just am so used to going from A to B as fast as possible. It was a brand new experience for me. I did end up lasting 27 yards, but after like 4, I was ready to just go home. So yeah, I didn't enjoy it, but I enjoyed it. It was a good experience.
Yeah, it's one of those experiences. It's not always fun in the moment, but
Right.
it makes for good memories.
Right. For sure. Well, thanks again, Scott. We really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was fun chatting with y'all.
That's all for today's episode of Tales on the Towpath. Thanks for joining us on another run down memory lane and along the C&O. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to follow, share it with a friend, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep your pace steady and your stories flowing.